I think that the role of having a chief patient officer is a very good reminder of what everyone should be doing each and every day. I think also one of the huge challenges that we've encountered is that often people say, well, I want to be patient-centered, but I don't know how to be patient-centered. And so I think the role of a chief patient officer is really to help people understand the best practices that are available for them to adopt within their own work. I think we also play a very important role in terms of making sure that as we identify some of the best practices across the organization, we can actually elevate and share those practices so that people can learn. So if there's a great innovation in Italy, people can think about how do I apply that in China. And similarly, we can play a role in terms of not only coaching people, but then also setting the stage for people to be able to share their work. The role of the Chief Patient Officer first is to really set the stage for how do we think about patient centricity. And so when I first came to the organization, one of the first things that I wanted to do is take the time to learn the organization and learn our strengths, learn what it is that we're currently doing. Based upon that, we then said, okay, here's a strategic framework, a way to think about this systematically. And then once we had the strategic framework, then it allowed us to say, all right, here are the kinds of activities that one can expect to see within each of the pillars of this strategic framework. And given those activities, here's how people are doing it here, here's how you can adopt it here. And so we spend a lot of time connecting people, elevating the work that is going on, also demonstrating what are some of the best practices, and then also helping people with some of the technical support or technical assistance that they may need to be able to move forward with this kind of work. So a lot of our work is really touching all parts of the organization, because I think that patient centricity should not be owned by the Chief Patient Officer or by the Center of Excellence. It really needs to be owned by everyone. So I like to call ourselves the internal coach for the organization to really help people get to the best practices that we have available for enhancing outcomes for patients. I think there's a number of challenges in this space. One of the first things, and I often say, is that I feel that this is in many ways a faith-based endeavor. And what I mean by that is that there's a lot of discussion around patient centricity, but we don't really yet know what is the value added from this activity. And so part of what we really need to think about is how do we make sure that this really is bringing value to patients, value to their physicians, and frankly value also to Sanofi. And so really being able to think critically about that and rigorously is an important part of one of the challenges that I need to be able to address. I think also sometimes there's skepticism. Is this really going to make a difference, or is this just one more thing that I have to do? And so what we really need to do is to be able to define patient centricity in a way that makes sense for people, both in terms of face validity, but also makes sense in terms of it really is having the kind of impact that we're looking to have. So I think the thinking around this, as well as then our ability to show that it really is making a difference, is one of the areas that we're definitely going to have to address going forward. One of the issues that we need to be honest about is something that we grappled with actually when I was at PCORI, when I was at the Patient-Centered Outcomes Research Institute. We were spending a lot of time thinking about how do you engage patients in research and does it make a difference? And after a while, we needed to recognize that we were making this up as we went along. That as we were trying to engage patients, we would try some things worked, some things didn't. We weren't sure about the level of training, what did they need, what did they not need, what did the researchers need in terms of their training. And so we frankly had to be humble to say we're making this up. Similarly, as we come now into the pharmaceutical setting, I think we need to be humble and say we're making this up. We are trying this, we are trying to bring in patients, we are engaging patients in a number of different ways. And this is why I think it's actually very important for us to be very focused on being a continuously learning environment, because what we have to do is try different things, be clear what it is that we're trying to achieve, and then if we're not being successful, fail, and fail fast, fail often, but then allow us the space to get to success. Because really, no one has really done this before, and we need to be honest about that, that there's no such thing as the person who's expert in this, but what we're all trying to do is learn from one another's experience. The things that keep me awake at night is recognizing the fact that there's so much work to be done. And while we have all of this discussion about patient centricity and improving the outcomes of patients, the fact is that the rates of chronic disease are rising, the long-term sequelae of those conditions are getting worse and worse over time. We're seeing expansion in developed countries and in developing countries. And so even though we have this focus on improving patient outcomes, outcomes, I worry that we are not keeping up with the need. When you look at the reality of what patients have to face on a daily basis, we are so far from the reality of what it is that patients need. So I'm worried that we're not going to be able to keep up. But we're doing all of this work and really trying to have the kind of impact that we want to improve patient outcomes. And so I'm hopeful that if everyone is pulling in the same direction, we'll really start to see improvements, real improvements that patients are feeling in their daily lives.